if we can deal with it in the past, I'm not saying it was pleasurable, but if we can deal with it in the past, dwindling workforce, shifting trade tariffs, supply chain disruption, energy price volatility, climate events, conflicts, policy changes, and those are our market disruptors.
This is the latest piece within a broader suite of research pieces that they've done over the last 12 months. All themed around certainty. The list of things that you've mentioned there, not least some of the geopolitical elements, they're so far beyond the control of most people. Maybe this is as good as it gets for a little while. Mr. Sumpton, I think we've cause for celebration this week in that I have fought every single urge in my body not to go with a stat-led story, and there are lots of them out there, so it took a lot for me to fight that. But also Westminster's gone absolutely bonkers, and I know that I over-index towards the political stories when it comes to story selection. So for you and all of our listeners, rest assured, we've managed to steer around it. I think this week we'll have to figure out a signal that if I do slip into that at some point, you'll have to subtly wave at me and tell me to stop. But I think we avoided it, mate. I think we've managed it.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got we've got three really focused pieces to talk around, really varied as well, which is always a good thing. And we've got plenty of time to come back to the stats and to Parliament at some point in the future. I'm pretty sure we mentioned this year.
No, I'm absolutely certain it will be. But I will say for anyone that they are very focused on specific stories. So by way of spoiler and to keep you entertained, if the first two don't directly correlate with your world, we do have Robo Dogs coming up later on. That will be the sort of big end piece. So if the first two don't quite do it for you, stick around for Spot the Dog at the very least, because something for everyone in that one, I think.
Yeah. We've been we've brought this episode down from national news to more of a regional news feel. I think so. Stick around for the positive news story at the end to do with animals, or technically not animals. Anyway,
well, in fairness, mate, if we're going to stay on brief and kind of looking for the positives, we might need a nice little fluffy and finally story, because we start with cost rises. So I'm going to do my level best to try and spin some positives, and I think there are some positives within it. But the headline is something that we've been speaking about for a while, and a lot of the consultants have been speaking about for a while. Is that if you're going to make a start, if you've got some projects in mind, any end clients that are listening to this, or people working with end clients, now might be a decent time to start to move, because if any delays, any certainty that you're looking for, you're literally going to pay for that in the form of increased cost rises. New insight out this week. We're looking at 3.6% in the UK. So yeah, time to get digging, I think. I don't know what you made of this one.
Yeah, to put it into context, the average global increase is 2.4%. And as you rightly said, it's 3.6 for this year in the UK. So this was a piece by Consultancy, Currie and Brown, and it's their forecast. And as you know, we like to put a positive spin on things. And I very much feel there's two things in this news story that can be positive. So first of all, you just thank your lucky stars you're not trading in Japan at the moment, because theirs could reach between 10 and 12%. And that's due to, no surprise, labour shortages and pressure on getting materials. And the second shining light for me is that when you read what they feel have triggered this and what's going to trigger it, it's a bit of the same old for me. So if we can deal with it in the past, I'm not saying it was pleasurable, but if we can deal with it in the past, dwindling workforce, shifting trade tariffs, supply chain disruption, energy price volatility, climate events, conflicts, policy changes, and those are our market disruptors. Well, if you were to sit either myself or yourself down in a dark, quiet room and say, okay, what's going to disrupt construction other than this podcast this year? What's it going to be? You'd probably mention those things.
Yeah. Yeah, no, completely. I will say we've talked about Currie and Brown and their research several
Mm,
times. This is the latest piece within a broader suite of research pieces that they've done over the last 12 months, all themed around certainty. And this idea of building certainty into supply chain. So the title of this one is Construction in 2026, where certainty comes from agility. Um, I think anyone looking for, I understand why people would want certainty, not least if you're making cost decisions. We've spoken at length about project planning and super projects, and certainty and absolute,
mm,
if you can find it, it's a magic ingredient for those kinds of things. But to your point, hard to come by, really, really hard to come by. I think, some of the list of things that you've mentioned there, not least some of the geopolitical elements, that they're
mm,
so far beyond the control of most people, certainly most people within our sector, that yeah, I think you kind of you play the hand you dealt. I appreciate I'm not an end client, so we're several steps removed and sort of commentating on
mm,
this, but within realms that there's only the phrase "control the controllables" kind of springs to mind a little bit. That it feels like market conditions are about as stable as they've been over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. I hate the phrase "the new normal," but maybe this is as good as it gets for a little while. And
mm,
consequently, as I say, the trade off is you can keep on holding your nerve, waiting for certainty. I feel like every year I read broadly the same line about, oh, this year's just about finding stability, but next year's where the growth's going to come, and it feels like the same headline and the same sort of bell curve on stats just moves a little bit further all the
mhm,
time. And then this feels like kind of a repetition of that theme. So I guess yeah, that's the trade off that people need to consider is that understandable desire for certainty is going to come at a financial cost to you. So are you willing to add on that 3.6% or whatever the case may
mhm,
be to your project costs in order to buy yourself a bit more breathing space? And also, I've mentioned it several times. It's something that stuck with me. There was a Turner and Townsend. I don't know if it was a report or just a comment that they'd made to their clients a little while back. Was don't be surprised if you end up at the back of the queue. There's not just a financial element, but something that we're going to talk on a little bit later on in another item is you know what happens if that labour is all snapped up by
mm,
another scheme. No, not only does that mean that your labour force dwindles, but the cost of available labour in market starts to creep up, or your projects are delayed even further. It's yeah, I don't know. I think everything is about risk appetite and a degree of sort of thinking like an economist a little bit and managing the trade offs. There's no perfect answer to any of this. It's just what's the least worst for your circumstances, and it may not be waiting.
yeah. My favorite word at the moment, choiceful. And I
Mm,
think that comes into play here, and some recommendations they've provided, Curry and Brown have provided, steer you towards that, and one of them is make decisions or key decisions sooner. Where do you
mm,
wanna play? What's your boundaries? And set them out, and that's not saying they can't change, that's just saying, "Okay, this is for the time being, if it's 3.6% or there or thereabouts, what does that look like for our future projects that are
yeah,
coming up? What do we actually want those projects? Do we want different projects? Do we want to play in a slightly different field or not? And also the addition there is using technology to spot certain pressures earlier, which I think we can all learn from, finger on the
mm.
pulse, using tech to help. We talk about it. I'm not going to mention our favorite, because I'm sure that'll come along in some future episodes. So let's avoid that for now. But yeah, it is cutting your cloth accordingly, setting how many phrases can I use here? Setting your stall out. Sound like a football manager, don't I? But yeah, it's all about being choiceful at this moment in time, I feel, but making sure that those choices are strategic for and for right for your organisation going
Yeah,
forward.
yeah, I completely agree, and that seems to be the overarching sentiment of the
Mm,
whole report is that be adaptable and have a degree of flexibility, but make sure that you do that within, to your point, your pre-agreed guardrails. It's not recklessness. It's not taking punts on things. It's being clear about what you are willing to do, not willing to do, what you can do and can't do from a margin and a financial point of view. And then understanding that things will deviate somewhat. It's the reason that you plan in the first place, isn't it? Is to be able to react to these things. Nothing's going to go A to Z exactly as it is intended. That's where these price fluctuations come from. And there's so many macro factors that end up affecting these things that yeah, you just got to prepare as well as you possibly can within parameters, and then adapt, to when things go wrong. As said, that there's enough existing data in the construction sector that tells you that these things will happen. So, yeah, use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of data and information,
Ah.
second headline is all about data centers and the data center drain. Now, this is a piece from Construction Inquirer, and it's all about the increase in labor costs brought about by data centers, or the boom that is data centers and development there, but in and around London and the workforce that's in there. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think the boom is the good news if we're looking for the positives behind the headline. And again, consistent with, again, I promise I won't harp on about facts and figures and stats too much, but consistent with everything, looking back at 2025 in terms of non-residential starts, the various sort of sectors that sit within there. Data centers absolutely, taking off like a rocket and dragging up a lot of the construction sector's averages with it. That looks set to continue again this year, and another slow start, improving, but still not where it needs to be in terms of resi starts. Non-residential continuing to move. Data center demand. There was something I saw from an Allianz report that actually, for all that we're going to talk about this boom and therefore what's happening to labour within the M&E space, UK actually lagging behind in terms of demand for data centers at the minute, or Europe as a whole rather, lagging behind. Um, London and Dublin lead the charge within Europe. There's a 43% increase in pipeline activity. And London and Dublin, the two sort of most sort of energy demanding parts of Europe, needing 1 gigawatt of capacity each. So this is what's driving all of that work. Obviously, our good friend AI that we mention every episode being one of those key exacerbating factors in this. But yeah, so positive that there's lots of work, positive that there's
Hmm.
lots happening, positive that there's lots in pipeline. Doesn't look like something that is likely to slow down anytime soon, given just how voracious our appetite is as a society for increasing AI, increasing tech, and so on. But something, again, back to Turner and Townsend and others have been warning for a little while that at the minute the labour side of things just cannot keep up. So I guess
Hmm.
another positive in that respect is that if you are working in M&E at the minute within the capital, I guess you're doing pretty well and you're able to not quite command whatever you want, but I would certainly think that rates are probably going up for that labour based on scarcity. But it
Yeah.
looks like, based on the Construction Inquirer article, the response from main contractors is a lot of building out their own in-house capacity rather than using specialist M&E contractors, which
Hmm.
I found interesting. Whether that's
Mm.
a temporary solution or not, I don't know. But yeah, it's an interesting one to see that it's something we've known was coming for a little while. That's the response to it, rather than looking at traditional sort of labour models. I thought was a fascinating one.
Yeah, and that word temporary fills you with a bit of fear, and
Mm.
that it's not just a bit of a knee jerk to this, and building teams to suit something that's for the now and not for the future. You know, although there's never a right and wrong way to do these things in internal or external development, it's a strategic choice, right? But I just hope that these aren't building in-house teams for one particular thing, and then they're not necessarily needed after that. And I'm sure that isn't the case, because we're always talking about some form of skills shortage, particularly in these trades. You know, your mechanical, your electrical, your plumbing, and it's not just on data centers that's required. I know that's an obvious thing to say, but maybe it will strengthen those contractors that do that. I'd be a bigger fan of getting your subcontractors in and helping them develop and making long-term partnerships from that perspective. I think it's strength in the supply chain,
Mm.
strength in SMEs and sole traders, and upskilling, and the bigger boys helping uh, people further down the supply chain. A big fan of that, but I completely get why people would want to bring it in house as well.
Yeah, I mean, let's see the way that it plays out. My hope
Mhm.
is that, and linked to the first story, that a lot of what main contractors do is about risk mitigation. And they won't be creating employment opportunities wholesale just out of the goodness of their hearts. I'd take that as a positive sign that, again, that they don't see the data center category slowing down anytime soon, and therefore it becomes viable to build their own permanent roles internally. I know
Mhm.
there's a space for all different types of employment. We've spoken about it before. One of the good things about construction versus other sectors is the availability for people to set up as a sole trader or as a small business, and to sort of use their skills to become self-employed and master of their own destiny in that respect. But equally, I think some central employment models are really, really useful. If you think of apprentices, or if you think of entrance into to market that don't have that skill yet, don't have those networks built in yet, etc. Whatever the case may be, don't hold the certifications or whatever they need to go and be self-employed. To have a major employer offer them a permanent contract and certainty of pay and certainty of
Mhm.
opportunity and all those things, I think is also no bad thing. And then there's probably,
Yeah.
if demand exists, there's probably space for both main contractor to build out
Mhm.
labor force, labor supply businesses that sit separate, and specialist M&E contractors to all kind of work within one ecosystem. But let's see how it plays out. Again, the story follows exactly the same kind of shape as the first item we were talking about. That this year's about risk management. It's about sort of balancing that demand, getting that balance right between winning work and pushing things forward and not overstretching, and having the capacity to be able to deliver. But 2027 is going to be the year that this all takes off and really starts to move. So it looks like a preemptive move by main contractors rather
Yeah.
than cost being an exacerbating factor now, which again, glass half full. Let's hope that's they've read the runes and they think that next year is going to be the year that things start to move again. I go back to my earlier statement. They're not just going to create employment opportunities purely because it's an altruistic thing to do. They're doing this because
Yeah.
it's commercially advantageous, and that's hopefully a good sign for all of us that are in the supply chain. That if they're making this move now, then hopefully that means that there's more coming for the rest of us. So let's see how it plays out. I think
Yeah.
yeah, but again, I've heard it before. Stability this year, growth next. But things like this, there is some financial skin in the game, so to speak, isn't there? That makes it feel a little bit more substantive and real if people are investing to build out that kind of capability. So, at the very least, in that data center part of the industry, that sort of subsector, yeah, looks to be continuing good times. So let's see how it plays
Yeah,
out.
definitely. Yeah, for sure. Uh, quick question here. Did you ever think in 2026 you'd be recording a podcast and you talk about Spot the dog?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
That was on your to-do list.
I did. I found the story on that basis. No, but I tell you what, it did put me in mind of. We didn't mention Spot by name, but we did talk about the possibility of canines and robots getting involved
Mhm.
in activities that either weren't safe for humans, but were absolutely necessary and were being filled by humans now, or people being genuinely concerned. I was going to say pearl clutching, but that sounds really, really dismissive of people that have genuine concerns about what happens to certain roles with AI and with adapting technology. But yeah, there was a piece that we covered several weeks ago from Simon Rawlinson of Arcadis in Building, where he was talking about practical applications for not just AI but for robotics and other sort of emerging tech. And it came up. I think demolition was one of the examples that he mentioned, was that there are certain roles where it's just dangerous, it's just risky, and we
Yeah.
can't get away from that fact. So maybe there is a space for robotics to start to help with that. But yeah, Spot the dog by name. No, we didn't mention. But I really, really, for those that haven't seen it, a fascinating piece this week about what's happening in the world of nuclear. And I'll hand over to you to tell more about Spot's role at Sellafield. But yeah, I really, really love this story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm originally from Cumbria, so I'm probably about half an hour, 40 minutes away from Sellafield, so I know it, and I know it well. Family members work there. Although they've never mentioned this to me, so interesting, keeping this a secret. No, all jokes aside, this is about using robot dogs to do pretty dangerous stuff, particularly on when decommissioning a nuclear power plant. Easy for me to say. So the whole thing behind this is that in nuclear tech and decommissioning, you have to go around and swab areas that potentially have high levels of radiation to monitor it, to make sure that people are safe when walking around, and some areas of that site are highly dangerous and others are really safe. And what they've managed to do is fit a robot dog with swabbing technology that mimics somebody's hand swabbing a certain area. Now they've tested this with chalk, I think, and it was successful. So there's no reason that they couldn't roll it out. And you think about that potential, and not that Sellafield has any fatality
Mm.
issues or even injury issues or health concerns. But the fact of the matter is, your humans aren't going into dangerous areas. We're getting robots to do it, and they'll happily do it, which is always a good thing. Um, yeah, go on. What's your take on this? Because this is I don't, it does sound very regional news and in other news, doesn't it? But
Well,
it's just in context, it is a really good news story.
well, I think so. Again, back to that Simon Rawlinson piece. Now, I kind of I love it when you hear something and the penny drops. Like, oh, it's so blindingly obvious. I can't believe that I hadn't thought of that before. Because for what it's worth, declaring my own sort of stance, but there are times where I've looked at what's happening with AI and the the potential for loss of jobs and changing roles and so on. Again, within marketing, I keep an eye on trade press there, and there are a lot of people that are very very worried about what might happen in that respect, and understandably
Mhm,
so for certain roles. Um, so easy to fall into the trap of thinking about your immediate world and what that might mean, and actually there's so many roles where you think about it, humans do them now, and this one, for example, the decontamination process. There may be some jobs lost, and that's horrible for those individuals. But there's some they sound to a lay person like me that it's so incredibly dangerous. That is it a bad thing that a robot could take over and potentially perform that task that's putting someone directly in harm's way? Yes, there's a salary attached and everything else that comes with that, but
mm.
good grief, it sounds like Spot's actually taking on a role here that yeah, it's only when you step back and look at these things you think it's somewhat baffling that we've got people performing these tasks, necessary though they are. That yeah, if we can find an alternative that is safer for humans yeah, it's absolutely no brainer. And I'm certain that
Mhm,
again, in Simon's article, he mentions demolition. If you step back and sort of look at the individual roles involved in these kind of micro sectors within construction, there must be so many roles that have a dangerous, repeatable, sort of programmable element to them that you could find a similar kind of application and limit that. So it's not the robots are coming to take over everyone's jobs wholesale. It's what are the specific tasks that are worthy of consideration for that. And I think safety is an absolutely, now that I think about it, it's absolutely the place to start, isn't it?
yeah, and it's long-term health as well. Um, Not that I know much about radioactivity or radiation poisoning or anything like that, but it's not something you wanna be messing with, and
Mm,
bringing it down a notch. It's even when I talk about long-term health, I'm talking about um, hearing, physical movements and things like that. And if you've got a manual job where it's really repetitive in an
mm,
awkward position, or it's or vibrations from certain tools, you can only use them for a certain amount of time. And I can't remember the name of the thing that people get, but I think that my dad was a joiner for many years. Loud environment,
mhm.
minimal health and safety when he was a lad doing it, using learning his trade, then his hearing isn't fantastic, and a whole host of side effects from what he did. And yeah, I think, yeah, robots aren't coming to steal our jobs. It's working alongside them, because somebody needs to have the skills to program them, have the skills to work
Mm.
alongside them. And what if they break down, or if they're not 100% accurate, or whatever it might be, there's jobs change and progress. And I don't think it's about stealing jobs. I very much think it's about working and living alongside them.
And that's there's a really useful point there, Pete, on things like we know more now about certain medical conditions, PPE
Mm,
advancements and things like that. There are certain people that will perform take joinery, for example, as the task there that you've mentioned, that generations past, certain practices just weren't a thing, and that's what progress looks like. It's incremental. It's how do I engineer the risk out of this? How do I take the danger out of that? How do we improve this little part of? It doesn't wholesale render the individual redundant. It doesn't remove the need for that person. It just improves, simplifies, and makes the process slightly more safe. And again, to your earlier points, I think is a really, really good one, and worth stressing. This isn't being done in response to something horrific having gone wrong, and therefore this is a root and branch thing where we're introducing this as a
Mhm.
matter of protocol. It's it's industry and academia being responsible, and sort of looking forward at potential applications for this stuff. And yeah, and long may that continue. Like I say, I'm
Yeah.
certain if you start with safety as the lens through which to view these things, there must be so many other potential applications that would be of benefit to humans, to sector, and so on. So I'm all for it. Good on you, Spot, and good on your trainers and handlers and so on. Because yeah, I think there's something in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I just before we go on to our takeaways, I just want to end with if you go to the show notes and click on the link for this particular news story from construction management, and then if you scroll down to the bottom and you look at related news stories, it just made me giggle. So I just want to finish on this. So there's like I think there's five, but three of them I just had to click on, and I'm not going to spoil what they are, but I'm just going to name say the headlines for them. So, remote control robotic arm passes nuclear test. Spot goes nuclear, and the final one is Smurfs tested for nuclear decommissioning.
So,
There you go. And if that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what will.
yeah, I was going to say that they look like they're on my kids' bookshelves. Several of those as story titles,
No,
but
yeah.
says more about my parenting, I think, than the the quality of those stories.
Get them into construction early.
Quite.
Right. Takeaways. What's your takeaway this week?
I think my big one probably links the first two stories, third to a certain extent, but again, life's about risk management,
Hmm.
and so is work in this sector. And I think you're never going to avoid risk completely. But as we covered in the first two stories, if you can build guardrails around what you're comfortable with, and then just accept that things will fluctuate between those, and be ready to respond when they do, it feels like a sensible place to be, and a decent lesson for the sector. So. Um, yeah, we're never going to engineer risk out completely, but how comfortable are we with the current conditions, and do we want to progress under those circumstances? I think is a big one for the sector to ask itself. So, yeah, how do we want to manage that risk, and how risky do we want to be?
If you think about even the last news story with Spot the dog, that's all about risk management and
Mhm.
keeping people safe and things like that. So I think mine's got to be about being choiceful, and understanding where you want to play and where you don't want to, and being bold enough, to your point, to make the right. It might not be the right decisions, but make the decisions that you're
Yeah,
comfortable with. No one can see the future. We can speculate. We can predict, but use those predictions. Use technology to put you in a better stance, so you can look at things strategically and move forward to the best of your ability. I think that's my takeaway, without a doubt.
good takeaway. And robot dogs for all.
And on that note, we need stickers with that on.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
post, we'll sort that.
Right. Sort it for next week.
Have a good one.
See you later.